Hello, it's Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada. And what we have here is a very fast Mercedes. This is a 2005 Mercedes-Benz CL65 AMG. So this car has the breathed on 6-liter V12 engine, increased from 5.5 liters to 6 liters, twin turbocharged with 1.5 bar of boost. And stock, it put out a little bit more than 600 horsepower and close to 700 pound-feet of torque. This particular car has a Eisenman exhaust and reportedly puts out 620 horsepower on the dynameter. Reg Reimer, who is well known in Calgary for his work on turbocharged cars, fitted it and dyno tested it back in the day. This car has around 43,000 kilometers and basically looks brand new. So it's a one-owner car, full records, no accident, no paintwork, about as perfect example of a CL65 as you can get. And also I have a next to new 991.1 C4S coupe from the same owner. Both cars look new. He's very fastidious. So let's turn this camera around and have a look at this CL65 in more detail. So sometimes I use the phrase cannot be reasonably faulted, and I would apply that to this car. We've got a one-owner car with a clean accident history, with no paintwork, with full service history, that's kept in basically as new condition its entire life and looked after by one fastidious owner. It really just doesn't get any better than that. So I think we've got a significant car for Mercedes and AMG. I think we've got a rare car. We've got a perfect example of that car. And then we also have a really beautiful, elegant, and fast classic that you can enjoy and drive. So you put it all together, and this is a great buy for somebody. I mean, this is, we also use the term a lot of car for the money. I can't think of another car that applies to more than this, okay? So, plus you can service it at any Mercedes-Benz center. The regular CL500 with options was about 140. The 600 series and the 55 series, they were about, this is Canadian dollars, they were about 175, and the 65s were like 240. So they would have been a good $75,000–$80,000 more than the 500 horsepower car. Okay, so let's take a slow look around the car. We can look first to the windscreen, and what we can see are a few tiny pits, but nothing that is starting to star or expand. That's the worst of it there. Okay. The original windshield. Okay, so on the front hood, we've got a few small chips that we can see. Now, I haven't tried to touch anything up or polish the car or do anything with it. This is just all the original paint and original finish, okay? So nothing that you can really notice, but if you look close, you can find a few stone chips. We have the protective film, which in those days was just the first 8 inches, and it's starting to yellow, and it's the original film. And then what happens to it is it shrinks a little bit, and you can see that white glue line. So you could replace the film. There are a couple of small chips on the front bumper. Again, it hasn't been touched up. And if I get down low and look at the underneath of the spoiler, you can see that it looks pretty good. There's a couple small marks like on the underneath of the car. And let's go over here. And we'll have a look, and we can see some minor scratching on the front, but that's it. The bumper's never been hit, and there's no problem with any of the gaps, which are all factory, and there's nothing loose. Sometimes these bumpers get hit and they're a little bit out of adjustment. This one isn't, okay? Sometimes the grills get dented, you know, by stones or whatever. The headlight or the fog lamps cracked, and that is not the case here. It all looks great. Okay. Along the sides of the car, we can look for stone chips or any scratching, and we don't find anything. I don't see any mark at all on the fenders or the door or the rear quarter or the trunk lid. Occasionally, you know, if the guy golfs or whatever, you know, you might see some scratches on the rear bumper when stuff gets loaded in, or suitcase or whatever. And you can see there's a protective towel in the trunk, and that is basically brand new. I won't pull it up. Okay, obviously that works. The side of the car, the driver's side, again, I'm looking for any scratches or door dings, and there is nothing on fenders, on the door, or on the front fenders. Looking at the wheels, we do see a bit of curb rash down here on this front wheel. The driver's rear looks good. There's very, very slight, wow, that's not even really a scuff. It's just dirt. Okay, so that one's fine. The passenger rear, we can see some curb rash on this wheel in a couple places. And the passenger front, this wheel looks good, okay? Looking at the brakes, looking to see if there is a lip there with the rotor, and it looks like we've got about maybe 20% that's been used from these cross-drilled two-piece, actually, big AMG brakes, okay? So it doesn't need front brakes anytime soon. Rear brakes, well, there's hardly anywhere there at all. So it looks like we've got big 4-piston calipers in the rear. And what are these? 1, 2, 3, so two pistons in the rear and 4 pistons in the front. And they're, looks like an aluminum hat and a steel rotor. So big brakes on this AMG, okay? For the tires, let's look at the rear, and they look to be virtually new. They're certainly, you know, at least, let's call it at least 60, 70%, maybe a little bit more. Okay. I believe the tires are about 8 years old, although they're stored well, so I don't imagine they've deteriorated much. And there's lots of tread on the front. Okay, so, I mean, pretty difficult to fault. A few little marks commensurate with the mileage and the age of the car, but completely original paintwork. Okay, well, let's fire this CL65 up and take it for a quick drive. We see that the tire pressure monitor warning comes on. So that's just the batteries and the tire pressure monitors, which are only good for about 10 years. The tires on this car are about 7 or 8 years old. So you probably, if it's important to you, want to replace the tire pressure monitors along with a new set of tires. These tires have more than probably 60-70% tread in the rear and probably 80% tread in the front. So it's up to you when you decide it's time to replace them, but you could do that at the same time. I'll just hit the reset button. We see 43,765 kilometers. We can demonstrate the ABC system by hitting the ride height, and it gives us the message that the vehicle is rising, and there's 2 positions. And it's doing so quite quickly. There's no lag in that. Now we're at the high position, and so I'll take the car over this little drawbridge here, and it does actually have quite a bit of ground clearance. And we can see the Parktronic parking sensors lighting up. And here we go. No problem. And we'll hit the button and the vehicle will lower. You can probably tell from your surroundings that this car comes from a good home. It's one of half dozen or so nice cars the guy has. He's just hitting 70 now, and looking to downsize. One owner car with no paintwork and full maintenance history. Hasn't needed much maintenance. It's just basically got an oil change the last 10 years. And we have an aftermarket exhaust, but inside you really don't hear it that much. It's still a very quiet and refined car. And of course, you would expect the twin turbo V12 engine to be smooth, and it is. You'd also expect the acceleration to be quite fierce, and with virtually no effort, the car just pulls. It's a gravel road, and alright, I'm just going to turn on the I'll go down here. I don't want to get a stone chip on the car, and nor am I going to bring a trailer speed records, but I'll give you a sense of the car. This is a rough rural road, and it's very, very comfortable, yet still the steering is sharp, and the impression you just get out of the engine is, unlimited performance without working at all. I mean, it just, the car just goes. It doesn't make the noises of the CL65 and with their supercharged AMG engines. This is a much more refined car. It's beautifully comfortable, but moreover, the impression you get out of it is one of complete refinement and unlimited speed. This is not a smooth road. And these are the roads around where the car lives, and so I'll take it on these to demonstrate the car. It certainly does demonstrate, while perhaps not the top speed potential of the car, it certainly demonstrates the ride quality and refinement. So they only made 777 CL65 AMGs in production from 1999 to 2006 for the whole CL lineup. It's a W115 body, but they only made the CL65s in 2 years, or at least they only imported it 2 years into Canada, 05 and 06. In the early 2000s, the CL500s that I used to order would have been about 400, they would have been a 5-liter V8 with 300 horsepower, and the first CL55s were normally aspirated. I think they had around 370 horsepower, and the first CL600s, again, were normally aspirated with around 370 horsepower. In 03, we had our first 500 horsepower AMG cars, the supercharged 5.5 liters, and that would have been SL55, S55, and CL55. And they were a big deal. Some of these cars sold for $20,000 more than the list price when they were new. It was a big deal to get them. So we had those cars for a couple of years, and then they came out with the 65s, again in the SL, S, and CL. And they were a lot more expensive. So a CL55 might have been $175,000, a CL600 might have been $180 or $190, and this car here had an MSRP of $254,000. So, and the dealerships didn't get very many. 777 produced globally, I mean, our dealership, which sold about 300 new Mercedes a year, would have got about one of them. So let's just take a turn here. Now we get onto the highway. Again, it doesn't take much to explore the performance of it, and you can't, or at least I'm not going to. It's just, with over 600 horsepower, it's just too fast. But amazingly, again, I use the word refined. It's smoother than the Bentley 12 cylinders that I used to sell. It feels, well, it feels kind of like the old Arnages in terms of refinement, but with a lot more performance. So we'll just turn around here. Anyway, so some stories about this car. Obviously, they went to, you know, our best customers. We only got maybe one of each, and we didn't want to take them on trade very badly. I remember my, you know, selling one of these to our one of our best customers, and then a year later he wanted to trade it in. And I remember our sales manager like running and hiding. he absolutely did not want to appraise the car and give his best customer the news that the car that he paid $250,000 for a year earlier was only worth about half as much. Depreciation on these when new was spectacular. And actually that's what happened to this car too, is the guy, the owner, talked about trading it in a year or two later and just couldn't believe how low the number was, and said, well, fine, I'm just going to keep it then. I'm not going to give it to you. And so, you know, he just kept it all these years. He didn't really drive the car, especially in the last 10 years or so. It mainly just sat in the garage with a few other of his cars. So like that was only 1/3 throttle, and I could feel the wheel spin and the traction control. And that's my recollection of these cars, is the traction control light was just like a strobe light. It was just always on. So you'll have to manage your rear tire wear with this car. Needless to say, it's not a particularly great winter car. I don't think many people would try that. But anyway, the depreciation on these was massive. $100,000 in the first year. But I think that now, you know, I think people are, these are, you know, have been going up in value, and I think people now recognize that, you know, this was kind of a high point for Mercedes coupes, and you know, now with, you know, electric cars on the horizon, I think people will look to these old school sort of analog cars, even though this one is definitely a grand touring car and not a sports car. But you know, there's not too many, you know, twin turbo V12 600 horsepower luxury coupes around. You know, maybe an Aston Martin and maybe the Bentley, but this is faster than both of them, and you can still service the car at any Mercedes-Benz dealer. And you know, running a Bentley or an Aston, you know, isn't for the faint of heart. You know, in Canada, a windscreen on a Bentley is $6,000. You know, the parts prices that you pay will be reflective of the, you know, ultra low volumes that those cars were sold in. But a CL, for, you know, at least 95% of the parts, was sold in reasonable quantities. You know, so when it comes to buying things like windshields and you know, whatever electronics or whatever you need for the car, you know, they're made in reasonable quantities, and the parts aren't that bad. So this would be in you know, a different league performance-wise from those cars. You know, a Bentley was, you know, over 5,000 pounds. This is about 2,000 kilograms, so about 4,500 pounds. So the Bentleys were about maybe 600 pounds heavier than this, and the Aston Martins weren't nearly as powerful. You know, the Aston said, I think, 450 to 500 horsepower, and this is 620. So it is a different league performance-wise, but also a different league in terms of maintaining it. I mean, people will talk about the ABC system, and any car that has its air suspended, you know, the struts are $1,000 or $2,000 a piece, and they do need to be replaced. This one's had one of the four replaced, so that's there. But I think overall, generally speaking, for what this car is, you know, the maintenance isn't too bad, and a fundamentally reliable car as well. So I think that with the, you know, the collectability of the car, you know, one of 777 made, so I think that with the collectability of the car, you know, one of 777 made, coupled with the relatively benign servicing costs, the overall practicality of the car, you know, it's very usable. You drive this car every day. I think it becomes a really compelling buy. I mean, what else can you get for, I mean, let's call it $50,000 or $60,000. It'll go 300 kilometers an hour, 0 to 100 in under 4 seconds. That you can drive daily and service at any Mercedes-Benz dealer, service easily. I mean, there's not too many cars that fit into that category. I also think the car is gorgeous to look at. I love the design. The pillarless coupe gives you a wonderful sense of space. Interior is beautiful, and then this particular example is just you know, an original, never touched, never hit, no paintwork, no accidents, no invasive service history, nothing that's ever, you know, given any amount of trouble at the dealers, and I really stress that, no invasive history. You know, some cars, you know, they can go back for the same problem 20 times and have, like, you know, 10 different techs working on them and making a big mess of it. You know, broken clips, things aren't rerouted properly, you know, people get frustrated, etc. So, you know, that just hasn't happened with this car. You know, it's a gorgeous machine. So the one last blast of acceleration here, and it's just, whoa, it is one fast car. And my apologies, there's nowhere I can really exercise this responsibly. You know, what a gorgeous machine. Thank you very much, Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada. Okay, to sum up with this 2005 Mercedes-Benz CL65 AMG, we have a car that was bought new at Lone Star Mercedes-Benz in Calgary, driven relatively regularly for the first few years of its life. And then for the last 10 years, it's basically just been in the garage here with another couple nice cars, and has been given, you know, annual oil changes, and maybe driven, you know, 1,000 kilometers a year or so on. We have a car that has all of its original finishes, has never been touched, it's never been hit, never dented, never stolen, no insurance claims at all, never vandalized, all the original paint on the car. Nothing's ever been done to it. We have a car with no invasive service history that's been, you know, more or less trouble-free. We replaced one strut in the corner. Maybe about 5 years ago, there was a computer that was replaced early on in the car's life. And that's basically it for maintenance. We don't have a recent ABC flush or any ABC maintenance, but there's no warning lights or any other indications that the system gives trouble. Also, I took a look in the warranty and service book, and it gives no mention of flushing ABC fluid on the car. Okay, so I know that's come up in some other bring a trailer auctions. I don't see how you could really ask for anything better. 43,000, maybe it has 43,800 kilometers on it now. It looks basically new on the outside, it looks new on the inside. It has low kilometers. Okay, so this example is spectacular. And then the CL65, well, they only made it, and they only made 777 of them total, and it's the flagship Mercedes. And it was, I think, a significant car because it was like the first of the German cars to really get in the 500 and 600 horsepowers in that era with Mercedes in the 2000s with the AMG. And I think, you know, it's 604 horsepower when it was new. It was really a huge achievement, and it really sort of shocked everybody that they'd actually make cars with this much power. Twin turbo V12 300 kilometer an hour coupe, 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, and they're just not going to make this kind of car anymore. So this is a great opportunity for somebody to have something that's usable, drivable, reasonable servicing costs, reasonable service and parts availability, a reasonable upfront price, something that you can use every day and enjoy, and it's comfortable and refined, and something that I think has some long-term appreciation potential because of its limited production and the statement the engineering statement that it made when it came out in 2005. Plus, I think it's gorgeous. So there you go. 2005 Mercedes-Benz CL65 AMG with only less than 44,000 original kilometers, one owner car. And I wish you all well in the auction. Thank you very much.